that. Da, 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 da,
Hello.
Hello, Bambos.
Hello, Andy.
Ronnie said she likes watching how we start our shows because it always makes her happy.
It makes me happy too.
It makes me happy too. I always feel like it's. I think some people would kind of think it's maybe not even genuine that we could actually be happy like that.
I'm not happy. We're complete opposites here.
Yeah. Would you say? So you'd say you're not happy, and do you pretend to be happy when you're on the show, or do you just let it flow? So how would you describe your state?
Are we having this discussion?
Yeah, we're having this discussion.
Okay. this was really a bad joke. Bad joke.
Oh, I lost my audio. Hey, by the way, before we do anything, we should begin the show.
And
we're going to say we are on with Simon Squibb, and Simon Squibb has a great podcast. He has an intriguing concept, and he says that luck is something of a skill. And so he has the Good Luck Club, where he brings on entrepreneurs to discuss the skill behind luck. And we're going to do that on A Wonderful Chaos. Hello, we are now live in Amsterdam, and we see that Simon, I'm wondering where Simon is, because Simon should have been on by now, but he's not. He says entering the broadcasts. For some reason, he's
here he is.
Unable to, or maybe he is. He said, don't put him on. Don't put him on. We let him stay there until we finally get him. Yeah. So I met Simon again through the same mutual friend that several of the guests have been on. Do you remember that mutual friend's name?
No.
Gino, he shuffles people over to me and basically says, Andy, how would you feel about having a conversation with this person or that person? And it's been really nice. So Simon is an individual who is an entrepreneur. He's been in so many different businesses, investing and just doing the venture capital thing. And he, at the back end of it, said there's a skill in luck that can be learned. And I've often had an interesting take on this, because I've often felt that a lot of the successful venture capital companies that I've been part of, luck was a massive part of the success. And everyone thinks, hey, you can control it. I have control. And what one doesn't see is that you prepare in some ways for luck. And when luck appears, all of a sudden, you have this incredible opportunity to leverage it. And of course, you need to know how to leverage it as well. And so that was something that I learned and understood sort of through my own business. And I often saw articles on it where there would be discussions around, for instance, what is the 5 criterias and what is the most important criteria to establish whether a company is going to be successful. And the one that they say is most important is timing, out of all the criteria that they set out. So when you look at me with those eyes, now I need to slow down everything.
Oh,
where are you?
I'm here.
Okay, good. But you understand why timing would be important, or how would you see it? Imagine to yourself, you have the best product, the best situation, and then you come to the market a year too soon.
Yeah.
Or you have set up this thing and you think, I'm going to mimic this other company who's done it, and they've established such a market presence and such a distribution channel that you basically came too late. So basically, if you get it right, that's really like a wave. You get lucky and you catch the wave at the exact moment. That criteria for me has been so more fundamental in terms of a company's success than anything else.
Yeah. I don't have that experience.
You don't? Oh, okay, good. So what's your experience?
Oh, just as a photographer, I don't see the timing being relevant.
And in some ways, you'd say, I'm guessing, Well, I would say it is totally relevant. You just haven't necessarily seen it. We set up a business, say, idea together. I said, Bambos, you need to do and update your image.
Yeah.
Now, we needed to update the image because social media became so important to people, and so much online presence made it very important for people to get their photos because they had an appearance to be shown on the internet. So that was your wave. Imagine if no one cared how they looked on the internet. You would say, Andy, it's just working hard. No, it isn't just working hard. People you don't convince someone they need something. They need it because there's something that they haven't yet been able to do on their own. So yes, you caught a wave.
Okay, you're talking about the social media.
Yeah.
Timing. Okay.
You see how when you look at life that way, everything is very, very different. By the way, we keep looking at Simon Squibb, and there's some weird thing that says EOS webcam utility where we don't see Simon at all, but we do see so I imagine if we bring him on,
we're going to hear him.
We'll probably hear him and we won't see him.
That's a shame. He has a good presence.
We can try. We can see what happens when we bring him on. But yeah, that was basically that luck. And I've also seen in venture capital companies, venture capital, where they'll do a lot of investments. The ones that are really successful, the ones that actually people go to, they're actually brought the best deals. So they actually look successful because they've been hand-given the deals that were going to succeed anyways. And they brought to them because they say, hey, we want you to invest in this so we get your name attached to our product. We don't even really need your money. And then they get perceived as being really good, as if they're really good at picking these things, when in actuality, they've been hand-selected to put money in almost for marketing. So that's been my experience through the years. And I love that we delayed till now, because it would appear that we weren't delaying at all. And yet now...
Timing.
Do
you want him?
The man's on. Here he is, Simon Squibb. I have no clue if he's heard anything we've been speaking about till now.
I've been sitting back enjoying the show, guys. Absolutely loved it. There's an interesting dynamic between you two. Like it.
Well, we're going to turn it off then. We'll get back to what we were talking about, and then you can come in whenever you want.
That's good. My favorite sort of show. No, I've got to be involved, I think.
We've got a funky delay right now. So we actually, when you speak, we have a delay between your voice and your video, which is fine as long as we try to act like we're not looking at your video, but just listening to you.
Okay. Well, I'm putting it through the audio machine, so I can turn off the audio machine. Maybe that will help, but then you'll have maybe an echo of the room I'm in. But we can try.
Yeah, I'd say let's do that, just to give it a shot, because I think it might be a surreal experience if I'm talking to you. And
how about that? Is that better? Is that better?
No, actually, we still got you. No, okay. It's we've got this. I think this would be an experiment in how would we say, in trying to have a separate reality where I'm looking at you and hearing at you, and there's such a different rate that I'm having to let my mind sort of melt in order to be with you.
How about now? Is that any better?
No.
No, very strange. Okay, well, maybe it's a camera, computer, Wi-Fi problem. But I must admit,
I think go back to the mic.
Okay.
I think go back to the mic just to avoid that echo anyway.
Perfect. Well, you know what you could do? You could reset and come back in again, and let's see if it syncs, and maybe that'll help things. And Bambos and I will continue with each other between then. Cool. So yeah, and I believe that people don't want to feel that luck is important, because if luck is also important, it takes away agency. You're no longer in control of your life if luck is also there. Like, it would be like now you've almost given over to something outside of yourself. How was that? Because I'd be curious how that impacts you.
I'm feeling curious, actually.
Yeah. Well, let's see. We see Simon back again. Let's see if we have Simon. Simon says,
Hi guys, hoping it works now. Are we in sync?
totally. You're totally there,
We're-
Simon.
Oh, you've got to
This
love
is
this
great.
new world, haven't you? This technology crap. Excuse me, I don't know if I'm allowed to say crap on TV
It's
anymore.
okay.
You've been
But
doing
yeah.
this for a while, though, right?
Oh, what you mean talking? It's been a while.
on with your own podcasts.
Yeah, I mean since January. So I think I was podcast 751,406. So yeah, since January, I have been that famous high number podcast host. But I've been talking for a while now, so I've generally got the talking bit down. But talking into a microphone and leveraging technology that does and does not work is not the easiest thing in the world. Very
Yeah,
frustrating.
I
when it doesn't
noticed.
work.
I was on your show, and we did like 5 minutes till it dissipated, and you
Yeah,
basically.
but I've got it all recorded, so I've got that all ready to roll out. I've been editing it, but the actual technology, the live broadcast bit, completely collapsed. And so
Yeah.
even before, when you said you could see me, I was trying to run a new Canon camera 4K system, which is amazing when it works. Like the quality is it's just beautiful camera work. But when it doesn't work, it's very frustrating, and I go the opposite way. And I just rather have a meeting with someone.
So we had the same issue. I've got a camera and I got a connector. It's beautiful connector. We got the camera, and then in the middle of our session, the whole camera, just the battery overloaded, and then we went to no camera. So at the end, we realized basically we're better off with systems that work and not systems that are the nicest for.
I saw you guys talking about that on one of your previous shows about how behind the scenes before, this didn't work, that didn't work, and I have exactly the same experience. And what's good, I guess, is that I noticed these days that BBC and all the big broadcasters, CNN, they all have the same problem right now. So even their broadcasts sometimes aren't as professional as I'm sure they want. So we definitely have an excuse. We don't have their resources, but even they are making mistakes when it comes to live broadcasting right now, and all sorts of crazy things happening with technology. So yeah.
Well, we felt like the name, giving it a wonderful chaos, also got us off the hook.
Oh yeah, you've got the perfect excuse. If it's not chaotic, then what's the point?
It's not
of having
working.
that name? So,
kind of what we expected, anyways.
Totally, yeah.
And let's not forget, it was born in the chaos of COVID.
Yes,
right.
It was born in the chaos of COVID, and it was born. We didn't even come up with a name. One of our guests came up, and after she left, she said, "That's a wonderful chaos." And then we looked and said, "That's it. We've got the name. Now we're done. Let's go with this."
I think I should have called all 17 of my companies that I've started in my lifetime Wonderful Chaos. I think Wonderful Chaos 1, Wonderful Chaos 2, Wonderful Chaos 3. That would have been totally fitting for building a business. Absolutely.
Yes. So I know that it's called the Joy Luck Club.
Yeah, that's the other one. That's the movie. But
that's the movie. I know. I know that it's called the Good Luck Club, and when we spoke about it, I never quite understood, because I don't know if our take on luck is similar, and that I have a very different way of looking at luck in terms of the venture capital companies I'm working in.
I heard you talk about that earlier. Yeah, I heard you talk about that earlier. Yeah.
And I never really I've kind of felt like we both had a different relationship with luck, and I was kind of curious what your angle would be on it compared to what you might have heard me say.
Nice.
Yeah, well, it was interesting listening to you guys talk. I did like it. I think it's interesting when you're talking to a photographer and the way timing. My wife is a photographer, so I could relate to the conversation. And timing is kind of the opposite for my wife. She takes her time. There is no such thing as time. It's just enjoying the moment, taking that picture, capturing the light, so on and so forth. It's not really about taking the right picture at the right time to make lots of money. And I think that sometimes there's a chasm. Now, my take on luck is a straightforward version and then the more complicated version. So maybe initially I can explain the straightforward version. I think the dictionary needs updating when it comes to the word luck. Right now in the dictionary, there is one definition of luck, and that is this concept of a random occurrence. And I think that there is such a thing as luck that's just random, but there is also another element of luck, which I think needs a second description in the dictionary. It's part of my mission. My mission right now is to help 1 million people start a business of their own. And I think the other part is then helping them make that business successful. And I think you absolutely need luck to be successful. All the other ingredients that get thrown around, like the harder you work, the luckier you get, for example, isn't necessarily true. Certainly not true for me. I made the most amount of money when I got really lazy and let other people run my companies. Then I had more free time to build up other companies. Whereas when I was working really hard running a company, I wasn't as successful. So actually, ironically, the harder I worked, the more unlucky I got. And so it's interesting when you have all these sayings throwing around the universe about how luck comes to you if you work hard. My point really is that there is some truth to it, but I think there's two definitions of luck. The first is this random one, and the second one is luck is a skill. And then there are three ways that you can be luckier in life. There's a formula to ensure that you have more luck. And so that's really what I'm about. I'm about updating the dictionary to have a second form of luck. And a practical example would be, there is the luck where, let's say, COVID's a good example. That's bad luck. No one could control it, you could argue, although there are conspiracy theories that someone's controlling it. But let's just lean on the side of normal and say that no one wanted COVID to happen, and that it's an unfortunate event for everyone involved. And so that's true. No one planned that. It's a bit like where you're born. You don't really control that luck, right? There's nothing you could do about that. That's where you're born. But then there's a second element that kicks in as soon as you're at a conscious years in life, where I think you can begin to influence your luck. So there is an argument, for example, the environment you're in does contribute to your luck, but who you surround yourself with becomes a choice later on in life, and so on. So I've got a theory around luck. I've written a book about it that will be out towards the end of the year, and is all about how you can actually influence luck. And I really got this insight from my own personal experience. I built 17 companies, and my recent one, Fluid, I sold to PwC, the accounts company. And they paid me more money for it than I deserve. And I basically don't ever have to work again in my life. And I was able to retire at 40. Although I left school at 15 and home at 15 with no money and one outfit of clothing. And so, I left home with no education and no money, and I was able to retire at 40. And retirement for me, a bit like success for me, is freedom, be able to do whatever I want every day without ever having to worry about the financial requirements of what I'm doing every day. That's retirement for me. And so I've got there at 40, and a big part of it was, frankly, the process of when I was younger, understanding, how you basically manage luck. But when I wrote this book, I initially wrote it like every entrepreneur that's had a big exit and been successful. I sat down writing about how brilliant I was, and how I'd done all these things right, and how clever I'd done this and done that, the deals I'd made, and the ability I had to do all these things. And then I reread the book to myself before pressing the publish print button on it, and I thought to myself, there's something wrong with this book. I wanted to be honest in this book, and there's something not right about it. And I read it, and I read it, and I read it, and I just thought, it's just something. It's like everybody else's book. It just talks about how brilliant I am, and therefore and I got the story to back it up, but it wasn't true. And I pinpointed exactly what moments actually made me successful. And you know what? There was literally a minute apart between total and failure, and I would have nothing, no money, no successful businesses today, and who knows, could be homeless. And being, a multimillionaire and never having to, work again in my life, and a success story. And there's literally a couple of moments in that story that were total luck. And those moments are what actually made me successful. Then I became obsessed with luck.
Nice.
And I wanted to understand, and I wanted to include it in my book, not just the stories of how I made it, the normal mantra that you hear from entrepreneurs of work hard and all that crap.
Yeah.
I wanted to actually get to the crux of what it is that made me successful. And I started looking at other people, the same thing. And that's what led me to do a podcast show, because I wanted to talk to people about this, especially successful people, especially people that are successful, that say they were just, let's say the Gary Vees of this world, who have done really well. And if you ask them about luck, it's almost an insult. I wasn't lucky. I worked bloody hard. I've worked 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. Fuck you, Simon. And part of me is like, yeah, Gary, I respect you, but let's to back up a second. You were handed a family business, a $3 million turnover business. And yes, you turned that $3 million turnover business into a $60 million turnover business. I'm not saying you're not smart. I'm saying that was a lucky moment, though, wasn't it?
I went into it. I had a talk with Bambos about this. I told him that in general, like, the life that I went into gave me opportunity and gave me an environment which taught me so many things, just because Dad was fundamentally about money and how to make more of it.
Right.
And that has such an influence in terms of your ability to be successful afterwards as well.
Yeah, and I think it's just an interesting conversation, because a lot of successful people, they you tell them they were lucky, and I've had it too. The conversation reversed. If someone comes, "Oh, Simon, you were lucky." I'm like, "Well, did you go out to China and build a company from scratch and take risk and live in a hovel for 3 years? Did you, it can almost be an insult, but if I'm being honest about it, it is a huge amount of luck involved.
Yeah.
And I think that unfortunately for a lot of people, they work very hard and they do a lot of good things, but they don't make it. And they wonder why. That are they stupid? Did they, and you mentioned timing earlier, by the way, which we can come back to. I think you've got it slightly wrong. Timing it sounds sounds right, but there's a bit more to it than that. And I think I prefer the word persistence to timing.
Yeah. Well, you could call it runway. Like, how much runway do you have for it to happen, right?
Yeah, but timing sounds like, Amazon, was it timing? Actually, when Amazon launched, you could argue the timing was absolutely awful. .com bust and so on. So you could argue, if you use the word timing to describe that, if he'd stopped during the .com bust, then timing-wise, it was a bad idea. But he didn't. Persistence is the word I replaced timing with.
I wouldn't see those as separate, by the way.
No, I think persistence is part of timing. So in other words, you're surviving until the timing is right.
Yeah.
But you can launch a business in the wrong timing and still survive. Right. So Amazon was bad timing, actually. If you look back at history, .com period. So I think I would say persistence, and then make timing part of the description of persistence.
Beautiful.
So
because I had this thing. Oh, you want?
Yeah, like when you say persistence, can you give me an example of how that shows up in your life so I can grasp it a bit more?
100%. I see. It's complicated but simple. So basically, I basically started out my career at 15 years old, knocking door to door, selling my gardening company services when I had no gardening company, I had no equipment, and I had no money. And I built a business from scratch, and basically by knocking on people's doors. And what I learned through that process was, you have to knock on 100 doors. Yeah, the first 5 say no, the next 5 said maybe, and it's just a never-ending slog. But a lot of people, and statistically in sales, people will call or connect with someone 3 times before they give up. Statistically, this is true about sales. And so they send an email, maybe they phone them, they send them another email, they don't get a response. They're like, this person just hasn't got back to me, and they cross it off their list and move on to the next one. My career, I always say to people, they're not, when a founder of a company comes to me and says, I'm the CEO, I say, no, you're the chief persistence officer. You're not the CEO. What your job is to do is to keep motivating everyone and keep pushing until you break through. And on sales, the example of that would be, I actually, when I first started my agency business, had 50 clients that I wanted to work with. And I called them all and rang them all, emailed them all, did all the things you're supposed to do. And I did that every month for 7 years. I didn't wait. I got 3 rejections. I didn't put them in, I'm never going to speak to them again, bracket. We just kept going until they understood what I could offer, or what I could offer was valuable to them. And so it's just a question of keep going, this kind of concept of, never-ending infinity sales pitch. If you've got something good and that person needs it, and you believe it can bring value to them, and they don't already have that value, you can't stop introducing it. So it might mean you do it over time so you don't become a stalker. And there might be some processes you need to put into place so you don't become a weirdo, but in their eyes. But ultimately, a lot of people aren't persistent. And if you ask me, I said a lot of talented people in this world that don't make it because they're not persistent.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of people that are averagely talented that are persistent and succeed. And I think persistence for me kind of links back to Simon Sinek, which we all know, I'm sure. If you don't know him, great TED talk about why we do things. A lot of the time, the reason I've been able to be persistent and therefore luckier is because I believe strongly in what I'm doing. And if you don't have that piece, you're often selling something you don't really believe in, so you give up, and then you wonder why you're not successful in that space.
Yeah.
And so that's one of 3 things you need to be luckier in life: persistence. I guess I could tell you the other 2 if you were interested.
No, I would like to sort of slow down a little bit here. There's one word that you use that I use a different word, which has for me the same meaning. And I'm curious what your take on that is that I always say the conditions must be in place in order for the emergence to occur, or more likely that the emergence will occur, to be more exact in the wording. So if an environment doesn't have the state of this potential, whatever the market will bear, then basically it just doesn't happen.
Yes, I think there's some truth, but like everything, the yin yang on that sort of point is that, again, you look at something like the iPhone. You could argue that the internet speed was too slow, too much going on one phone in those days. Even now, my phone can't keep up Wi-Fi wise, right? So you could argue that the iPhone was ahead of its time. But because it was ahead of its time, it was able to create the market and then build out the ability to handle what that phone could do over time. So I do think you don't necessarily have to wait for I think sometimes it's good to have the infrastructure there, but equally, I think sometimes you can also build the infrastructure or create the demand. And I think that's the other side of the coin. That's kind of the Steve Jobs way, right? It's like people don't know what they want. So I'm going to give them what they want. Or you have the Henry Ford quote where everyone throws around, which is, if I asked my customers what they want, they would have said a faster horse.
Yeah.
So you create, there's not enough, he didn't actually create the car. Henry Ford did not create the car. The car was actually a patent in America that he got into a lot of trouble in because he tried to create a mass production. That's what he invented, car. But he didn't invent the car. Right.
Yeah,
but when he realized that everyone should own a car, he not only needed to then create a mass production system, he needed to create wealth so people could afford to buy the car, which is why he began the minimum wage concept. So that his own workers could afford the car he was producing. So in other words, he created his own market.
Yeah. But that's what I mean by conditions.
Yeah, he created his own conditions, though. He didn't wait for them.
But that's what I mean by conditions. When you say conditions, you're making an assumption that conditions implies the environment I'm in, where when I say conditions, I'm saying, no, you create the condition through how you, in Henry Ford's condition was, I need to create it. So he is not dependent on his environment. He creates the environment.
Yeah,
So
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. I mean, of course, there's people nowadays that are doing like YouTube stars and stuff like this. The YouTube channel is popular and they jump onto that existing popularity and become successful. Right. So there's also, it's already there, use it. But there's also then what we're talking about, I guess, agreeing on really is that there's also the ability to create the environment for yourself to be successful.
Yeah. And I would suggest then, if in our terminologies, it's kind of interesting, is that if one sees the condition that would need to exist for it to succeed, then like Henry Ford, you create that condition.
But I mean, I've studied him quite extensively. He didn't realize that people couldn't afford his product. And he couldn't get the price down quick enough. I mean, he didn't set out to make his workforce pay for his product to begin initially. He wanted normal people to buy his product, but then he realized that if he could, he'd create an extra market to buy him, paying his people more and keep his staff happier, so he didn't have to keep replacing them, right? So, anyway, it's a fascinating area, but going back to it's basically, it is for me an element of persistence, right? Because the market might not be there, but you've got to find a way of either surviving until it is or create it.
I find that beautifully stated. And that we similarly, actually what I see is we're completely aligned, because when I say timing, I mean persistence.
Right. I know. That's when you said it earlier. That's why I wanted to mention it, because I know you're saying timing, but I think it's misleading.
Yeah, I'd like that you say that, because in a weird way, timing could be 10 years.
Right. Yeah.
Because you actually have factored in the fact that there will be a time requirement in order for it to be the uptick to happen. So it's interesting, because when you look at a runway and you look at the burn of however a company can exist, in some weird way, you're really saying this is the opportunity you have. And if you can't get it done by that time, then you won't exist as a company, which is why so many venture capital companies go out of business, is because their runway burns out and then they just drop.
Yeah, there is an interesting element to this that is kind of reverse of it, which is knowing when to quit, I guess. Having a runway is quite an interesting way. I also even have it with what I'm doing. I'm like, okay, I've got a series of things I want to do, and I'm going to give it 2 years of investment. And if it doesn't work in 2 years, I start to achieve my goal, then maybe I do something else or change the formula. So I think it's quite interesting, because a lot of people out there are doing things they don't love because they've heard someone on a podcast show say persistence is key. Yeah. And they're persisting, thinking that it's eventually going to make them lucky, but that's not really the point. I think if you've got why in there, it makes it easy, but you shouldn't stick at it for the sake of it.
Yeah. Question for you. Bambos is a photographer and he'd like to become a millionaire.
Right.
How do you help him become a millionaire?
There's a funny saying, a lot of billionaires come to England, and but this is maybe before Brexit story, but they used to come to England, maybe I should say, and buy football teams. Yeah, that was the thing to do, and then you could get a work visa here quite easily if you buy a football team. A couple of billion, and the football team's yours. And so that joke was always, how do you become a millionaire? Well, you start as a billionaire and you buy a football club.
Yeah. I have
And
the
so
same joke.
that's another way to go. You become a billionaire and buy a football club, and then you become a millionaire if you like. I mean, I don't know many photographers whose ambitions are to become a millionaire, so I don't believe that's really him talking. But most
No, it is him talking.
it is him talking. No,
Yes.
I don't think so.
Actually, I'm needing your help right now, Simon. Simon, I'm needing your help. Like, support me to help, like, Bambos figure out where he can make a ton load of money doing photography, because I've been saying there's a limited in what that potential can create just because of.
No, I mean,
you can defend yourself at any moment, by the way.
Oh, I just discovered I want to be a millionaire, so I'm like really like, okay, let's do it.
Yeah. Well, I would just say that I say I'm a millionaire with a slight cringe to it, because it's certainly not the most important thing in life, and certainly not, I think, the most interesting thing about me. But I think somehow it brings credibility to, you're an entrepreneur who's been successful, I've noticed, especially with young people. But I don't think that's ever anyone's goal, really. I mean, ultimately, people think that they want money, but I don't think that really is what people want. I see success as freedom, and if you love doing photography, then just having the freedom to go and photograph things. Maybe you need money to fly there, which right now might not be the best thing to do. But generally, money is a tool to allow you to do what you love, right? I mean, that's, to me, the only thing money brings you is the only thing it buys you is time.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the most valuable thing in the world. But I think that to become a millionaire as a business model. Photography business model, I think there's millions of ways to be a millionaire as a photographer, and there are plenty of photographer millionaires. Paul McKenna, is that one? I pronounced his surname right. I'm slightly dyslexic, but he's a good example. He's a millionaire. He's a photographer, and so I think there's a combination of perfecting your craft, being good at it. That's one way, and you apply my lucky formula, or have the second element of luck, which is random, and you can become a millionaire being a photographer. I think there are many sites out there that I won't name brands, but you can take a picture, put it on that site, and millions of people can buy it and put it in their ads. And next thing you know, you've got royalty from your photo a million times, and you're a millionaire. And being a millionaire really isn't that hard. Or you can buy a property and wait 20 years. And hope, buy $500,000 property and wait 10, 15 years, and hopefully it's doubled and you become a millionaire. There you go. You don't have to be a photographer to become a millionaire. There's plenty of ways to leverage your income to become a millionaire too. I mean, Tony Robbins talked about this recently on one of his podcast shows, about how a DHL driver became a millionaire because he took a part of his salary and put it into certain stocks and a certain system very regularly over a 10-year period, and became a millionaire. So, how does a DHL person become a millionaire? Well, probably persistence is part of it.
Nice.
And applying yourself to it, and then, my other feeling on it is, if you really want to become a millionaire, then maybe just put it out there. Hey, I'll sell 10% of my earnings forever until I'm dead if someone gives me $1 million, and see how many people say yes.
Would you say yes?
Well, I mean, frankly, that's what VCs do.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just trying to see if I can get a deal done before this thing's over.
I don't know. I don't know his earning potential well enough. I personally have a bit of an issue with owning pieces of people's future income.
Obviously,
which an investor does, by the way. I'm an angel investor, but sometimes some people, when they invest, they think they own a part of that person, not a part of the business, right? So I'm going to have a piece of your income for the rest of your life because I've invested in your business and own 10%. So I'm kind of joking about the 10% thing, but there's just so many ways to generate wealth that sometimes it's just a matter of creativity and what you're willing to do.
Yeah. I had an interesting situation going back to persistence. I moved to Vienna, Austria. I was a long-haired hippie, and I cut my hair for a job interview. And then it was a job, basically, first job was working for Procter & Gamble's product services. I sent out 100 resumes. I only got one response, and I went and I cried at the interview because I said, "You're the only response I got." And of course, I didn't get the job. And then I kept persistent. And then I got a job where I basically became a marketing director for a company that was going public with no marketing experience, right? It just was a circumstance of, I worked, I replied to these ads, got an ad, went to the interview, said, "I'm not interested in the job you're offering me, but I'd like a job in marketing." Then if they asked me what marketing was, I couldn't have answered because I didn't know. And then I got the job, and then the guy above me quit. And then all of a sudden I'm now taking a company public where I don't have any experience in marketing or going public with a company. And I was a long-haired hippie in India that I cut my hair for just for that job interview. So now I finished that process. A year later, my brother writes me an email and says, "You got lucky." And on 2 sides, I was like, first, fuck you. I worked my ass off. I created the opportunity through persistence. And yes, also I got lucky. But it was like, but you didn't take the first one into account at all in terms of how the second one materialized.
If we'd updated the dictionary, you wouldn't be so offended. That's my mission.
No, exactly.
You'd be like, which type of luck did I get, do you think? Both? One or the other? Tell me. And the answer will decide my future relationship with you. If it's all random luck, then fuck you. But I think sometimes people just, even they don't understand there's only one definition when they use it. They're like, oh, good luck. I'm like, well, how am I going to get good luck for sure? Don't give me that unless you know. But yeah, I hear you. Good story. By the way, when you tell stories like that, I feel like you have to throw up a picture. You know, I want to see long-haired hippie you know. You can't tell those stories of long-haired hippie you and not throw up a picture. I've never
seen a picture of you with long hair.
Ronnie loves the picture. Give me the book, Bambos. We'll put it on. I've got the book here. There's a picture of me in those years. The Last Letter book. Basically, I took it's my history of life and all of the things I went through before. And then there's the one picture of me in front of the Taj Mahal, which would have been about 2 months, I think, probably, or 3 months before I got the job as the marketing director. I'm just trying to see here. So this would have been, this is the hippie version of Andy right before he became a marketing director.
Right.
And that was the hippie.
Yeah, wow. You look like a marketing director. That's why. That's what marketing directors looked like back in the day.
I went to Vienna. So if I had done the same in America, I would have never gotten the job. And in Vienna, they assumed, you know what? He speaks English. He's American. Americans know how to present things. So I got the job without the qualification, basically.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, at 19 years old, I won an IT contract, and all I'd actually done was gone on an IT course for 1 week. You just need to know 1 minute more than someone else sometimes to win those things. And then my view is fake it till you make it is fine, which is kind of what you're talking about there. I think fake it to make it's fine as long as you follow through and you're sincere and you wish to follow through. So I'm sure when you became the marketing director, you got good at it and you did a good job. Otherwise, you wouldn't have stayed.
Exactly. But I mean, I was scared. I threw up a lot because I was so scared that I was going to be caught. And I remember my coming out party, as if it was like I'm telling the world I'm gay, was that I did a photo exhibition with all the photos I took when I was on my travels. And I did it, and it was like a real, like, guys, this is really who I am. And it was a big deal for me to say this is really my background.
And 1 week later, you were gone.
No, actually, they basically, I was clever enough to have the company pay for the photo exhibition. So basically, all those photos were then in all the hallways of the company.
Yeah. To be honest, I mean, that's the good example of marketing. It's just a natural thing anyway, isn't it? Sometimes it's all exaggerated. And that was, you clearly, by getting them to sponsor the photo exhibition of your own photos in itself is marketing genius. Yeah. So there's plenty of ways to be a marketing person. Going to school might drum it out of you, if you ask me.
Yeah, true. Very true. I mean, you kind of see it's a state of mind in the end. It's, you know, when you call persistence, I often associate persistence because I'll do a lot of sales training. And for me, sales training is like it's a stand-up improv. Like if you're really good at sales, then you're just good at improv. Like whatever anyone says, there's always something that basically makes it not a negative. So I'm not interested in your product. Oh, I understand that. So what products would you be interested in then? Or we don't have a budget. Oh, I understand there's no budget. And then, so when do you see a budget becoming potentially available? Like there's actually nothing that anyone can say that wouldn't have a response to it.
Do you know, I don't know why when you explain things, first of all, I completely agree, although I want to take an opposite side. I found that on our podcast. You know, I love the debate between us. And my opposite point to what you're saying is my number one salesperson in my agency, we had 300 people strong agency in China, right? And my number one salesperson was my accountant.
Yeah.
Right? Not me. And I am a good salesperson, but ironically, they were my best salesperson because they weren't trained as a salesperson. They had absolutely no spiel. But what they used to do, which was brilliant, is they were the top CFO. They would go and have lunch with other top CFOs. and they'd be sitting around the table all with their non-sales approach to life. Like, this is what's happening, this what's going on with you. And they would say, oh, my CFO would say, I'm working in this company. It's doing some really great things. We just turned this company around and now they're making money again. We just helped Estee Lauder go into China. And now they're one of the most successful products there. She'd just tell CFO friends what was going on, the blunt truth. And then those CFOs would go back and talk to their CEOs and say, you know what, maybe we want to, our finances, we're down and we can get this company into help. I was just talking to their CFO and this is what they're doing. And then I'd get a phone call and they're always the best type of sales. I'm not trying to sell anything. They're asking me to go and see them, right? The reactive sales.
Yeah.
Yes, I do up the contract and sign the deal, but frankly, my CFO had already done the sale for me.
Yeah. I mean, what you're speaking to is relationship based, as far as I hear it, where things emerge because people just trust. Like,
yeah, I guess I'm just taking slightly, the whole sales approach, like what, and you're right, the process of what product do you need? Well, I have found the most effective salespeople are people that are not selling anything. Again, a photographer is a good example. My wife's a photographer too. As a hobby, she does it. But people are always saying to her, oh, can I buy that? Can I do that? She's not selling anything. She's just doing what she loves, and people just kind of approach her. Like it's just it's magic. I'm always envious of that type of sales because I'm always the opposite. I'm like, you want to sponsor my podcast show. And sales art, you do, you don't, you do. And whereas the best salespeople in the world I've seen people are just like, you want to sponsor my podcast show? I guess. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg I just saw his 2004 interview, his first ever interview, and someone said to him, "So you just raised $13 million for Facebook." This is 2004 interview that was floating around, and he's like, "So how did you, when you pitched to the VCs, how did you get them to do that?" He's like, "I don't really think I pitched to them. They kind of pitched to me." They're like, we can help you. So I just said, yes, all right, put the money in the bank. You're like, that's just the best sales ever, isn't it? It's just brilliant.
Yeah. It sounds to me that you've really been studying the so-called greats, or you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I guess so. I do. I have actually. Yeah. I look at people's path and I like to understand the process of how they've been successful. I mean, Bill Gates, for example, fascinating. Elon Musk, fascinating. But I also like looking at companies like Google. How did they start? How did in the middle? What happened? And now, how they're staying relevant and still look like a young company when they're not. It is a fascinating. I do find that whole thing fascinating. I mean, studying other people. I love people watching. It's all fascinating.
It was interesting because speaking to your point, I was talking to a professor at this University of Innsbruck around the subject of business people that succeed and then write books. And he said there's the phenomena at the end of World War II, the planes would go out and then they would get shot up and then they'd fly back in and then they'd analyze the planes in terms of where the bullets hit. And then they said, basically, wherever the bullets hit, we need to put more reinforcement to make sure that the planes are more secure.
Interesting, yeah.
And they were analyzing only the planes that came back. So in essence, they were reinforcing exactly the points that they didn't need to reinforce because all the ones that didn't make it back were exactly the ones that would have told you far more than the ones that did make it back.
I love the analogy, and it actually relates a lot to what my experience. I mean, I've flown 17 planes in and brought 3 planes back, but I've actually got the experience of the ones that crashed and burned. And I think that's also the insight around kind of why I know that luck played such a huge role. Which, of course, if we bring a plane back and say, well, this one was lucky to come back, so there's not much point in doing anything to it, is there? It's hardly going to keep engineers busy and make people feel like they're making a difference. And I think using that analogy is pretty interesting. I do think, some people learn the wrong things from success as well. They come back and they're successful. They learn the wrong things from that. They're like the route they took was the reason.
Well, I mean, his argument was that the ones that are writing the books did the exact same things as the ones that actually didn't. And the fact that they made it through and then
you just give me an idea to try and make my book stand out on the marketing side. Thank you, marketing genius.
I'll send you the
I have flown and not come back, and I have flown and come back.
I'll send you the term.
Yeah, please, because absolutely. Yeah,
it's beautiful. It even has the skits of the grams of where these airplanes were hit. You could see
in fairness, there are a lot of books out there on the entrepreneurial side. I mean, some of them are actually talking about failure. and they are talking about the things that have gone wrong. I personally just have not seen much when it comes to like people accepting elements of luck and then explaining what luck is. That's the bit I find, because I do think in that analogy, sometimes when you come back, it is just luck. A bit like, I was watching the 75th anniversary of World War II recently, and there was one of the few surviving veterans of that war, a guy called Benjamin Adams. He's 95 years old. He was in the Royal Air Force, and he was talking about how he used to fly over. He was flying over D-Day and watching all the soldiers coming off the boats, and he knows how much training went to each and every one of those soldiers, and how equipped they were and how ready they were. Yet, you could be trained, equipped, and ready. You step off that boat and a bullet hits you, and then you step off that boat and a bullet doesn't hit you. It's random. And so all that training, all that prep, all that knowledge, that extra whatever you had on that was designed by someone to protect you coming off that boat didn't work. And bang, you're gone. And I think that he talked about that element of like random luck happening. And I think that's true with every success story and every failure for that matter.
Yeah. I don't know if that was exactly the intent of that story. I think the intent was that the story is being told by the ones who have succeeded, and therefore it's not actually taking into account the actual the real story. Meaning, because you're only interpreting the facts that you get, and not necessarily the ones that are left in the sea, for instance.
Right. Yeah. I understand what you mean. Yeah. I mean, it's. Again, it depends on how those planes went down. It could have easily been an engine failure. Nothing just make your engine. There is some argument, by the way. I've seen there's a study done on why Britain did well in the Second World War, but why Britain did badly in the manufacturing space after. Of course, American manufacturing did quite well straight after the war because they bombed all the German manufacturing plants, right? But as soon as they came back to life, the German manufacturing system, BMW, Porsche, all those kind of German cars, and now they own all the British brands, I would like to add. They did really well for the opposite reason they did badly in the war. In the war, they made a tank that would last years, the Germans, right? They made tanks that would last years. They were brilliantly made. But tanks in the Second World War had an average lifespan of a week and a half before they were destroyed. So what was the point of making them really well to last for years? So in the Second World War, British manufacturing was much faster at producing an inferior tank, which meant in the war it won in part because it had these inferior tanks that only needed to last a month at max, whereas the German tanks would have lasted forever sitting in mud, right? Wow. So that's why in part, there's lots of reasons, but in part why Britain and America and so on managed to win the Second World War. Well, and German manufacturing was actually better. So of course, when you come out the other end and you're now in the real world, when you manufacture a car and it lasts 2 weeks, British car companies didn't do so well. So German car companies that make cars that don't rust and last 10 years, then that's why they do well. So, what works in one situation might not work in another.
Isn't it true? Context is everything. Yeah.
Totally.
Beautiful. I know that you get excited when we have guests on that are from more of the entrepreneurial background. So I'm curious from your side of things, are there things going on for you that you're kind of peaked at the moment?
I guess I'm a little bit living my own, or revisiting my own path and seeing where what Simon says, where it lands in my journey.
Bambos is as tenacious and as persistent as any individual I've ever met in my life. And I've always been challenged with how he works because I see my perception, right? The limit to which his industry, how he's going about it through single individual photo shoots or event spaces, how that growth occurs. And so we've often had discussions around what his wealth potential is, even with his persistence. So I'm assuming that the two other things we haven't spoken about would probably factor into potentially what would be important for him to consider if he wanted to have the kind of wealth that you're pointing at. Or he doesn't care about wealth. He just says, if I cover my costs and I'm living the life I want to, that's great. And if he said that, I'd be really happy as well. But in some ways, given COVID especially, that's not possible.
Yeah, I want to know what you think, because in my podcast, one of my opening questions is always I say to successful people, what is success for them? And I think it's fascinating to hear the different answers. And I'm 45 podcasts in, and every answer kind of blows my mind. But what's success for you?
Not giving up. Like when I started my business, I didn't pay my bills for a good part of 2014, and I was living off organic vegetables from the organic market, going in with a hoodie so people won't recognize me. And I was willing to take it to the bitter end. Like I really was told that you don't have an education in photography, you're this, you're that. My camera was breaking down. So when I met Andy, he kind of supported me. Like we were experimenting. Like he would say, make a suggestion, I'd go try it out for a few months, and I think I would keep doing it until
I said it's not working. It's time to do something different.
So I think 2 weeks before I would even get kicked out of my apartment, we had a talk, and he actually trusted me to use his space because it was winter. So doing photo shoots outside was not a possibility anymore. And I think I made like 1,500 euros a week with a photo shoot, one day photo shoot that I was offering. And by the end of the year, I paid off all my bills within 6 weeks. So I was thinking, oh, that was luck. Like the fact that he trusted me, and yeah, I can never.
And the only reason I trusted you was because your persistence.
It all interlinks, doesn't it?
That was the only reason I trusted you.
Well, you followed through. I mean, that's a big thing for me too. I don't mind failure. I just think if people are going to do something, they say they're going to do it, then they should do it. That's honesty. That's all. That's the only thing I ever look for in people. I don't mind failure. We all fail. But I think if people don't then do what they say they were going to do, sounds like that's exactly what you went and did, what you said you were going to do. And that's key, isn't it? But it's interesting when I ask you what is success, you talk about persistence, and I get it, follow through. But I think that's why I love asking the question, because everyone has a slightly different answer.
But slow down. Don't go there too fast.
One moment.
I want him to go back to it. Sorry, that's why I asked.
Okay.
I would say success was not allowing my mind to define me, because I think I woke up every day that year crying, and I'd say, okay, cry, but we're still going to go out there. And I was ferociously networking with all the 5-star hotels, and half a year it gave me no business. Actually, the business from the hotels came only 4 years later. They reached out to me. So all that networking paid in the future.
Yeah. Patience.
But
patience.
I would say my mind goes completely to fear. Like I'll get depressed really easily, and don't even want to get out of bed. Like I'm more prone to ending my life than anything else. But the fact that I didn't allow myself to go down that path and get up and just stay focused actually, and not trust those stories was for me a big success.
Wow. Yeah, I hear you. Well, interestingly enough, fear and risk. I actually think fear is an asset, but it's interesting you talk about fear in that way. And I think, I mean, it's definitely something. So the 3 elements, because we've mentioned it a few times.
Slow down. Before you go there, I don't want to jump over this.
No, I don't. I'm going back to that too. Yeah.
I didn't feel like he answered the question.
Well, we're getting there.
Okay, if you feel like you can get there, continuing where you were going, then please continue.
This is what two podcast hosts on the show. Look what's happening. I should just sit back and answer questions. I think that's
no. I'm with you. I was more worried that we weren't going to get to his avoidance.
No. I don't want him to avoid it either. But I also feel like there's some emotion there. It's quite a deep thing, isn't it? Talking about this is why I like the question so much. What is success? Is a journey, isn't it? That's kind of what we're talking about here. You're beginning to explain your journey. So actually, just carry on. What happened? You pushed through. Hotels 4 years later are contacting you. I'm kind of interested in what happened in the end.
Oh, I the business grew word of mouth. So it's not like I had a kind of structure that, like, as I went along, oh, you need to do your social media. So I started doing social media. Am I doing it perfectly? Fuck no. Like I
No
think
one is.
so. But I just saw that the business was growing through word of mouth. Do you do weddings? Do you do this? The answer was always yes, even if I didn't know. And then I would have to figure out how to Google shit and talk to people. And I guess last year, or the last 2 years, not including this year, I lived the kind of image of a photographer that travels 18 countries and does a lot of events. But truth be told, I hate traveling, but it pays a lot. I hate getting on the plane, actually. The rest is fine. So yeah, you might say right now I'm ranked second best corporate photographer in Holland. And
Second best. Love that.
well, yeah, there's another one who's a bit ahead, but at the same time, like when Andy says, if you want to make money, do something else. Like I don't see myself retiring. I see myself innovating in this. Like I get emotional because there's no fucking way I want to do anything else.
That's why I know for sure success for you has got nothing to do with money.
Well, you know, it got to the point just now with COVID 2 weeks ago. I went to the supermarket. I had no money to pay for stuff because all my corporate events got canceled this year. And yeah, I felt that in my heart, like, fuck. Like I left the supermarket crying and
that is very hard. No doubt about it. So how did you get out of that? How did you pay for food?
So I thought I was going to go back to picking vegetables from the market again, but apparently Andy just threw 3,000 euros on my account, telling me that part of the journey is also receiving help. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Everyone needs an Andy in their life, don't they?
Yeah, my brain still sees that as a failure of receiving something because I need to know that I can do it by myself.
Or a success in something, you've worked hard and earned someone's respect, and they're just there to help you at a hard time. You can look at it two ways, right? Perspective again.
Yeah.
Wow. I want to cry now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what am I avoiding?
I don't know about avoiding. I often find when he asks a question like, what's success? I've been trying to ask you questions like that for ages, and then you always answer with negatives. And I'm always wanting you to say, like, I know what my success is, but when you say it, you don't just say, oh, my success is I close my eyes in bed and I feel this deep inner peace, and I see that I'm productive in the world. I'm giving meaning to others. I'm stretching myself far enough that I'm learning and growing, and I'm not avoiding anything. Like that's success. Like I can see that success. And money is not separate from that, but that's not what I would say the success is. And when he asks you the question, you go into a story from 4 years ago as if that has anything to do with your whatever that is for you today. So the question really is, what is success for you?
It's hard for you to believe, right? But it's really overcoming my mind. It's a daily thing. It's really a daily thing. Every day, overcoming my mind. It feels sometimes that I've been born with this structure or belief system that's so ingrained in me. Like you're not good enough. You're a failure. You're dumb. So, and every day I overcome that. Like even now, I just recently started educating myself in Dutch, and it took me 23 years of living in Holland to make a step to start learning, and it's really slow, but I'm like, oh wow, I'm really learning. Like yesterday morning I woke up like, fuck, I can actually have a decent conversation, feeling confident with the sentences that I'm putting out, where before I was just coping. So I'm pretty much trying to dismantle this belief system.
Yeah, I find the way you're thinking fascinating. I'm not a psychiatrist, so I can only comment that I've got a 3-year-old, and I see how I interact with my 3-year-old goes into his subconscious. So there is this thing I'm reading about children when they're young, and whatever you tell them becomes their own belief system.
Yeah.
So you know, the way it's described, and I'm dyslexic, so I don't read much, but the way I've understood the whole process is, whatever you say to a child becomes their inner voice, right? And it's the 0 to 7 years that this all happens. It's in your subconscious. Hard to control your subconscious. It's what drives, makes you breathe and stuff, right? It's all instinct stuff. So my instinct around your instinct is that there's something there 0 to 7 that got inside your inner voice.
Oh yeah.
And that's why, I mean, I've been to see a psychiatrist in England. This is a bit of a taboo thing to say, but I have been to see a psychiatrist because my father died right in front of me when I was 15 years old. And then I worked my arse off to hide from that problem and that pain, right? There's also an element that sometimes work can be the answer to the problem, but sometimes work can be the mistake where you're running away from the problem and not addressing it. And I feel like you're kind of a conflict of the two. There's some element of both there for you, isn't there? Your work is kind of you're tying up your self-worth in that work. And when you have the high and low in that work, which everyone has, somehow that's related to your high. And that's probably something to do, I'm not a psychiatrist, something to do with your upbringing. I don't know what your parents did or what your family background was like. But am I onto something with that, do you think?
Yeah, of course.
You could drop the mic and that would be fine.
So I drop the mic, boom. Yeah. I see a lot of the entrepreneurs, you see. I mean, a lot of entrepreneurs are very driven people. And then when you dig into what's driving them, sometimes it could be negative things. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I worked really hard from 15 when my father died to 25, just completely just ignoring the pain of losing my family and actually losing my mother because I moved out of home and losing my connection to my 3 brothers because I moved out of home. I spent a good 10 years just ignoring that, and work was my answer. And now that, it starts off this entrepreneurial story, but really the truth is I was running away from pain for the first 10 years. And the more I buried myself in work, the less I noticed that pain, right? But that came back to bite me as I got older. So I think what you're doing is you're running and trying to deal with that conflict at the same time, which is, I've stopped and dealt with it. I'm in my 40s when I stopped. I spent the last few years, especially when a child comes away. Do you have kids?
Yeah.
You have how old's your kid?
I have an 11-year-old.
All right. I mean, that changes everything too, right? When you have it, it didn't change things to you?
Oh, I'm not allowed to see her.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm getting into very sensitive area now.
No, but that's the program. By the way, there's nothing we don't discuss here. Yeah. So
okay,
don't
good.
think that
I run a business show, so sometimes I would be going way too deep.
I'm answering the questions because
Bambos will cry on the show. I'll cry on the show. We have there's no professional.
I would be crying, but you two are already crying for me, so I'll hold back until it's my turn. But yeah, I mean, I find that my relationship with my 3-year-old, who's about to walk into my home any minute, and it's all going to become very chaotic. This wonderful chaos that you're talking about is about to happen. My son's about to walk in.
I love it.
But I find, my wife and I, we've had an absolutely wonderful relationship for 20 years. And then when our child came along, in a way, we have more conflict in the last 3 years than we've had our whole lives because we've always agreed on stuff. And suddenly we're talking about a human we both care so much about. I'm surprised everyone doesn't get a divorce. Or everyone doesn't have, and I think part of me doesn't want a divorce because I can't bear the idea of being away from my son. But equally, at the same time, 2 people that aren't happy together in front of a child would not be good. I'd just like to add, I'm actually very happy in my marriage. But the point I'm trying to make ultimately is that those younger years of your life end up affecting everything. And I think your child, I mean, that to me is so. It changed everything for me. I mean, I wanted to make sure that I was more balanced, not working so hard when my child came along.
Yeah.
I don't know how it affected you. Yeah, I don't know how it affected you when your child came along. Did it I mean, you didn't get to see your child from day one, or was there a break?
Short story, got pregnant after knowing each other for 2 months. And I tried to be a good father and be a good partner, but I just didn't love the woman. I loved the person, but not as a partner. So when and I wasn't very conscious back then, not that I'm conscious now, but I would do it differently. I actually walked out of the relationship and I was really incapable of communicating what was happening for me. So given that, there were consequences, let's say.
And do you ever think about reaching out to your 11-year-old? How does that play out in your mind?
I do reach out, but there's no space for it.
Right. They're not living by, not easy to connect. Is that part of it? Or is it just time's gone by and that's life sort of thing? You did say we could talk about anything, so I'm going there.
Well,
yeah.
Well, funny enough, I discovered my daughter has an Instagram account only yesterday. And it just showed up like, oh, that's my daughter's name. And and it said artwork. So I wasn't sure if the mother was running it, but I actually clicked follow and to there, so it was unfollowed. So in a weird way, there's when I say there's no space, I try to reach out in different ways, messages, not always reciprocated.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I don't, without going into the psychology of it, which I'm not a psychiatrist, but I also find this stuff fascinating because I fell out with my brothers. And funnily enough, I now have a relationship with my brother's kids. But for the longest time, I didn't. And it was nothing to do with me and his kids, right? But of course, the parental control piece, it was about 15 years old, my brother's kids, when I started having a very close relationship with them, when they got to know me as me, not as the story of me by their father. So I think there is a time and a place, right? I guess.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, there's probably some loyalty to the mother there, right? Or even if she's controlling her own account. But I don't know. I mean, it's kind of sad to me in this day and age that dialogue can't happen, because I think that's healing for everybody. I mean, she must feel pain. You feel pain. What's the point of all that?
Yeah.
Like you say, you weren't as conscious as you are. I mean, I think you're very conscious just listening to you now. But I mean, we all change. That's a whole another piece of bullshit I hate. That leopard never changed its spots. I totally don't agree with that either.
Yeah.
I think people can change and people can realize their mistakes and try to correct them, right? So
and I think as we talk a lot about on the show, is that once a story is created, then that story tends to be the reality, and then people can't see through that because they've actually just perpetuated that reality.
Yeah.
So exactly. You become a bad person because I treat you like a bad person, and you react to me and that kind of thing. Yeah. By the way, your son can come on. We have kids on the show a lot, so.
Oh, good. Oh, well, they're just kind of standing outside the door because they don't want the dogs to bark and start.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's good if the dogs bark. It's all good here.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah, but I think on that we can we've already gone over, but we tend to like to go over. So it's if it goes over, it means there was a meaty bit that we needed to let continue. And we've got Gino on, who says it's a wonderful episode. Hi, Gino. Gino is the matchmaker. He's always throwing people together and saying, figure it out yourselves.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Nice.
So thank you, Gino.
Thank you.
And
I would just, by the way, I just wanted to mention, kind of taking it back on track as far as, one of the interesting things we've mentioned here that do tie together about my point around luck. Because I think there's you mentioned it a few times, but knowing your destination is very important when it comes to being lucky. So, part of, knowing what Andy's kind of been talking about a little bit is like, this is his idea of what success looks like. And he closes his eyes and imagines it. And therefore, if he's at that place, he feels like he's successful. And I feel like that's part of what you've probably got to do too. My instinct is that you've got to have a bit more of a succinct answer around what success is. It could be success today and success tomorrow, but I would say success would be at some point reconnecting with my child. I think that will bring you happiness. Mm-hmm. And I think that will bring your child happiness, actually. And so, why, two people will be happy. Yeah. Why doesn't that happen? Now, it might not happen today. It might not happen tomorrow. But if you visualize it, I think it will happen.
Oh, I know it's going to happen.
That'll make you successful, I think. And if your daughter then sees your photography work and says something nice about it, that's it. I think your success will be, you'll be the moment of peak of your success where your daughter appreciates your craft. And so what if a 5-star hotel can't use you right now? So what? We'll find a way. You've got friends that will help you eat until that time comes back. But that's not success or failure, is it? That's just a byproduct of the journey.
Yeah. It was interesting. One thing you said, which is something that I've been saying in different ways to Bambos, and not well, obviously, because I haven't found a way to articulate it, is that there's I don't want to be the negative. So life is a reaction to the negative. And then there's the paradox of, and this is the positive where I want it to be. And it's often I've noticed that your brain almost, I'm interacting with someone who actually it's like a foreign language to you. Like when I say, this is the positive version of your negative of, I don't want the negative. And it's almost like he doesn't have the capacity to feel the positive. It's not in his DNA. It's like, it's not, the wiring isn't there.
Yeah.
Well, is that true? Is that how it works for you?
Yeah.
This is my son, by the way.
I know. Hello.
He wants to smash the keyboard because that's fun.
That's fun.
And then it might cancel everything. Just say hello. Just say hello. Don't have to smash the keyboard, sweetheart. Just say hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hello. Hello. Goodbye. Okay. Go to your mama.
Look at
Stay with
that.
me? Yeah, look at that. Oh, look at that. He's going to smash the keyboard.
I have that problem with
open.
Andy also.
Yeah, he has a problem with me.
Yeah. I'm going to have to do this.
I'll
I'll do this. Okay, don't smash the keyboard. You can stay, but just don't smash the keyboard. Poor keyboard. It hurts him. He's actually gone. Okay. All right. Yep. I lost you.
Oh, we're
Sorry,
here.
guys.
We're still here.
Oh, you're
We
still
hear
there.
you.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they say never on TV never work with kids or animals, right? So
Yeah. Well, we've noticed it always goes haywire, but that's part of the joy of the show. So you were saying I made an assumption, and which I like to do, and I like to declare it. And you questioned that assumption. You said to Bambos, is it true that you don't necessarily know how to access the positive, or it's not necessarily in your?
I would say that's pretty accurate. Like I'm really aware of that.
and why is that, do you think? We're not frozen, folks, just so you know. In case they're looking at is this frozen? We're just thinking. We're thinking. This is an important question.
I can't really say.
My take on it is that you're punishing yourself a little bit. You're almost scared to have too much joy as if you don't deserve it, which of course you do. Right? I mean, it's there's some punishment there. You're punishing yourself. That's my instinct. I might be wrong. Andy, what do you think?
There's a second mic that you just dropped. So.
Oh, can you hear me now?
No.
Oh, I see. I thought I dropped the mic. I thought you.
No, it's the figurative mic. Yes.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Bambos has a hard time if he's not putting himself in like strenuous situations. His learned behavior is, I need to put myself under stress in order to feel alive. That's my take.
I think we've all done it, by the way. I would say that
I've done it.
Yeah. I think the question is how long you stay in that state. But I think we've all done it.
For sure. So how do you get someone out of that state?
Where would you want to get it?
Well, I mean, to be honest,
I love your reaction and his.
Why would you want to? Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting psychology, isn't it? I mean, there's actually joy in sadness, and there's in sadness there's joy.
Yeah.
Right. So I think there's an element, and I have this behavioural issue even myself. Like there's the parts of me at 15 years old where I left home and I left everything and I just got on with a new life, and every so often there's a moment where I could do that again. There's a habit there that I need to make sure I don't repeat, and I have to catch myself. And I think I have a hard time building friendships. It takes me a long time to be friends with people and trust people, because I had 3 brothers that were my friends, and suddenly they're not in my lives anymore. Through no fault of my own, and my mother controls the environment, so I don't get to see them anymore. So that then over time seeds itself as a difficulty having any sort of trust that a friend's going to be there over the long term, which is why I get actually also quite emotional about what Mandy as a friend is there doing, because I think having someone that's actually there for you when you're down is the hardest friend to find. The ones that are there when you're up are easy to find, frankly. But yeah, I think there is an element of, your history repeats itself, or you've got into that cycle of like high, low, and you kind of almost, they call it self-sabotage in psychology, right? I mean, your subconscious is self-sabotaging you.
I don't really see that like that, or at least when you speak, I can see why you would say that, and I just feel running my business and trying to at least make it sustainable. It comes with a lot of stress, and I do see that we talked about fear, right? And I see how the fear can sometimes really, like, I just don't want to get out of bed. So I had to put myself in a situation where instead of allowing the fear to come to me, I go to the fear. So I'm scared of this, I'm scared of that, and actually start inducing those situations into my life so I can, I'm still alive. Now, the fact that I'm not smiling or celebrating it, maybe I need to smile more so Andy can find more peace with that. But I have to say, it does fucking suck. Like this morning, I get up at 4:30 and I slept 4 hours, and I just have to. I have to find that space in me. I don't really see it that I have a choice. Like, I don't have a backup plan. I don't. So, in a way, I have to make sure that I live every day fully, and and make sure that I. Yeah, I'm emotional because I can't always explain. I can't always explain it, but internally, it feels like my life force. It feels like it's the thing which sustains me. So I don't have to be understood by people, but yeah, it's my way. It's a way that I've chosen, and it does keep me sane.
And for you, your context, Bambos went through years of drug addiction. So in some ways, we talked about the German tanks. In some ways, I can never say to what degree he needs to be this way in order for the other way not to be active. It would be arrogant in my case to say, hey, this isn't what you need to be or go through. or to sustain your life today, so you don't become the drug addict that does not function in society.
No, I have no affinity to drugs.
No, but that's not about the drugs. It's about taking another path, and that path is not taking you away from the drugs. It's just how you chose to live, and that now defines you in the world. And was,
But it's still an identity.
but of course, it's always then going to have some identity in it. So yeah, that's where I am in my relationship with Bambos.
Well, I just want to say I have no understanding of the drug world. I lived in Thailand for many years and saw drugs everywhere, but I never personally got involved in that world at all. I just interviewed a lady who was also a drug addict. She talks about how she now helps people in this space, and how she sometimes sees people who are helping drug addicts who have never been a drug addict. She's like, how can they understand what it's like, or help someone that is been through that if they've not done it themselves? So she's Carolyn Cowan, her name is. She's just a fantastic podcast. If you get a chance to listen, you might get something from it. But she talks about this. But one thing I've just been reading, my wife has just been reading to me because I'm dyslexic, about our son, and how to bring up a child who doesn't fall into the drug world. Environment is one thing. I don't know how you fell into it. I'd be interested. But the other element I found fascinating was about being listened to. The whole thing in the book my wife was reading to me was about how a lot of studies were done on people that became addicted to things, and often it's suppressing emotion because they weren't listened to when they were younger. And so this book is all about how to avoid, bringing up a child who then ends up in that world. I don't know. I'd be interested. I'm learning about for my own child. How did it happen to you? How did you end up in that world? Is there some truth to what that book is saying?
I've said this story so many times.
Don't feel you have to tell the story, by the way. It's up to you.
No, I guess getting to study Dutch again, I realized, so I was born in the UK till the age of 8, and my father was a little bit of a crook, so he was getting on the verge of getting arrested. So we actually left the UK, went back to Cyprus, which is their birthplace. And I was thrown into a Greek school, not knowing any Greek. Doing Greek till end of primary, couldn't navigate it, getting beaten up for not learning. And then they put me into a British school again. And I missed the whole foundation of a British primary school. So at the age of, eventually I had to quit school also because I just couldn't cope with it. Like I couldn't learn, and it was really difficult. It was really stressful. I was being bullied. So there was a whole, and my parents, I guess to their best of their ability, never really did have the tools that you mentioned that you have right now to raise a child. So getting beaten up, or just not having that safety. So now that I'm learning Dutch, I got to relive a little bit of this and understand better why I've been feeling stupid my whole life, and kind of dismantling that belief.
There's that inner voice that you were given when you were 0 to 7.
Yeah,
it's not your fault. That's just
sure. But it's not my fault. But I'm choosing to do something now about it. So a lot of people tell me, why are you learning Dutch? You don't need it. And for me, it's not about that. It's really about, I'm fucking scared. I've been telling myself my whole life that I'm dumb. And now I'm learning, and I'm teaching and doing it myself in my own way, my own process, taking my time with it, 1 hour a day. And it might take me a year, it might take me 5 years, but it's important for me. I don't know if this is why this question was relevant, but
I wish we were sitting together, because I sometimes find over technology hard to connect exactly. I feel your pain though, and I also respect it. I think there is some discipline in pain. I get what your point, where you need it somehow to bring discipline, and that's how you get through the day. I can understand it. I guess, I mean, from my side, I always think about things in the context of business. I always say to people that need my help, I can help you in business. What can I do? Everything else I'm pretty useless at. I'm trying to be a good father myself, so I always like to learn how I could do things better by my own mistakes, my own parents' mistakes. I saw a great meme that you might appreciate recently. It was I'm big on TikTok. When I say I'm big, I think I'm big. I've got a bit of a following on TikTok, and there was a brilliant thing someone sent me on TikTok, which was basically two people, and one said, "My father." He grew up. The two boys left home. They had a drunk father. They both had a drunk father. One left home and became super successful, whatever that means. What I'm talking about today is defining that, but became super successful and happy. And the other one grew up to be a drunk. And when asked, how did this happen to you? How did you become a success, or how did you grow up to be a drunk? They both gave the same answer: because my father was a drunk.
Wow.
So this fun little platform that everyone sees as a dancing entertainment thing has taught me something, and maybe by sharing it, it's it's something. There's something in that, this perspective on your journey, and then your view on I'm happy, I'm sad, and people's view on you happy or sad. It was interesting. You said earlier, Bubbas, when you were saying, "Oh, I'll smile to make Andy see that I'm happy." I get that. Sometimes it is about what other people perceive you as. I mean, my wife and I, we do get on, but sometimes when I argue with my wife thinks I'm shouting. I'm not shouting.
Yes, you are.
Yes, you are.
I'm informative, and I'm being very clear. But to her, it's shouting, because she's very gentle, and she's actually very like you, brother. She's very kind of not. She doesn't talk too much, but when she talks, it's really impactful stuff. Not like me; she's not talking all the time. But it's just perspective, isn't it?
Yeah, by the way, just to make something clear, I never want Bambos to be happy. I don't want him to be disconnected from his emotions.
Yeah.
I'd rather him be totally unhappy. I'd rather he bring it onto the show and we talk about his unhappiness and make it really like a horrible broadcast of just misery than having him shut down emotionally, just stagnate inside and then being present without being here. Like that.
Yeah, well, I think you're getting what you want, Andy. He's definitely being himself.
Today, oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but
and I love it. It's the hardest thing to be authentic.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I think that's something people need to take away if they're listening to this show today. I think authentic trumps everything.
It does.
And there's something about being happy or being unhappy. I look at happiness and I don't see happiness. Like, have I been happy? Sure, there's moments where I can experience happiness. Like even if I'm here, like yesterday, I felt destroyed after our podcast. Like I watched it last night. I couldn't. It was painful to look at myself yesterday, but there was a part of me that was happy that happened because it knew that it was good. It was good for me ultimately. Like I really felt broken yesterday, and I might even say I might even see that as being happy. Now, do I go out in the world, get drunk, ha ha ha, or like put pictures of myself with a big fucking smile and life is great and saucy? No, because I don't experience life in that way. I find like today great joy in the fact that I talked to 5 random people, which has been a really real big struggle for me because I got social anxiety after COVID and just trying to connect back to humanity again. So I got a lot of joy out of that. But it wasn't the kind of joy which I needed them to make me feel a certain way, but it was just in that moment I felt it, and then I didn't come here feeling high, for example. It didn't make me high. It just, I overcame today the pain of not being connected to people and having just real conversations with random people on the streets. I can give myself
I
that.
feel you. I feel that. I miss that too. I also have, I think everybody has, my 3-year-old has a fear of people right now. It's ridiculous. He walks down the street like, Daddy, watch out, people. Because we've got 2-meter rule, right? It's just like, it's just, I think that's what I'm talking about, the psychology. I wonder about the generation now that's going, the 0 to 7 subconscious years kids. People are now scary things. You can't be too close to a person, but we're naturally tactile people. I think I'd rather have, a hug and then die than have no hug at all, and die. So I can relate to that. But I think the perspective you're bringing, Babas, that I like a lot is that we're all different.
Yeah.
I think sometimes people want everyone to fit within a certain bracket or certain structure. And I don't feel like that's the right way to think about things. It's kind of you're for Trump or you're against Trump, or these kind of structures that we've created. You're rich or you're poor. It's all bullshit anyway.
Yeah.
But I also think happy. I mean, I don't know your view on this, but I always think happy is a misleading word as well.
Yeah.
Because I want to be happy. When I've got money, I'll be happy. Money does not bring you happiness unless you're already happy.
Yeah.
In fact, if you're not happy and you get money, it makes it worse. More drugs, more whatever, like
more distraction,
more and less motivation. I mean, I would say even for myself, I was happy when I was poor. And in part because I was poor, I had a good reason to go out and work hard every day.
Yeah.
And not pleading that having money is not a bad thing, but it can be. I mean, ironically, it can also be a bad thing.
Yeah. I always think freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I actually like nothing left to lose. I think that's the secret to success, actually.
I agree.
But a lot of people are so busy not willing to risk it all or put their emotions out there or share who they really are. And actually, I think that's the key to, not happiness is the wrong word, but to, long-term contentment with yourself.
Yeah. Making peace.
And moments of happiness, like you just said.
Happiness,
I mean, there's moments. But unfortunately, I think some people are looking for the permanent happy moment. There's no such thing. There's highs and lows.
We've gone half an hour over our. I don't know if you realize, but it is an hour-long broadcast. You've set the record. You've set the record for the longest podcast. I let this one go without any reservation. I think we've got 2 edited podcasts from this single time together.
Is this good news or bad news?
It's great news.
Yeah, so the first edit is Bambo's crying, and the second edit is luck.
The first one is luck, and the second one is Bambo's getting over his self-sabotage. That would be the second one.
Yeah.
But we're not going to call it self-sabotage. No, I don't want that thought in your brain.
Well, the label's always a funny thing. It's just so I break it down into different parts, isn't it? I actually really enjoy honest conversations, and I like to learn from these things. And if I could also share some of my learning to help other people, that's my mission in life at the moment. Anyway, I'm producing a lot of content to try and help people who think they can't start a business start a business. I'm kind of shocked how many people think they should just go work for someone else. And ironically, Babas, your story could put people off working for themselves.
Have him on. I want him on as a guest. I want him on as a guest. Yeah.
Yeah, I do actually. I actually do want you on as a guest. I do want you on as a guest because I think the entrepreneurial journey is misunderstood. It's not this glamorous thing where you're suddenly the founder of Facebook. Yeah. I mean, the reality for most people is the story you're talking about. Your story is and I've been there myself. I didn't eat for 4 days, and I didn't have a friend called Andy. And so, I can also relate to it. Now, maybe people that have never been in that situation can't understand what that's like. I've never been homeless, so I count myself lucky. But I almost was. And in part, it's those low moments that make me appreciate what I've got today. And I think that's the part of it, isn't it? It's partly being appreciative for still being alive, to use your words earlier. Just grateful you're still alive. And sometimes I don't think people are.
Yeah, and we're going to close up, but we have one person, David Kaiser, who's been on the show as well. And he's asking, what's the name of Simon's podcast?
It's the Good Luck Club podcast. I've actually got a banner here. move my microphone.
It's
out
the
of the way.
Good Luck Club podcast.
Yeah, the Good Luck Club podcast on Spotify, Apple Music. You can go to my website, goodluckpod.com, goodluckpod.com, and you can
And
listen
David,
to the
I posted his Facebook page on my timeline on Facebook, so
You can find it there as well.
find it there too.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
asking. Thanks for sharing that. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Simon, for being with us. It was a great show. I loved
Absolute
it.
pleasure. I really enjoyed getting to know you, Bavers, and I hope we, Andy, get to do this again.
Yeah.
Thank
Send
you.
you love. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Take it easy. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Ah, that was fun. It's a beautiful show. Yeah.
I noticed today I made more effort to look in the camera.
Oh, did you?
Because when I saw us, we're
Okay.
always looking down because the screen is higher. So
Yeah.
or we have to put the screen down.
Do you notice that I'm looking at you all the time? So it's like, oh, my receding hairline is the only thing people see. Though I don't know. I kind of think
I try to straighten you, like
I know you do it all the time, but I mean, I've kind of given up. I've kind of given up on the idea that anyone's really watching us. I think people turn us on and they kind of keep us on in the background. Anyone for an hour of anything, you're not going to. So I'm relying on the podcast to be the thing that really carries our show forward. I think the video portion of this is just more for our enjoyment as well. There is some fun in this. Tomorrow we have a really cool show. Why do you laugh?
yeah, Peter Koenig, he's a king.
Peter Koenig, he's the king. And Peter, I've known for years. He got into my life through the money work. He has a practice called projection reclamation. And I've stolen it. I've used it in both my books. In fact, the second book coming out August 31st is using the technique with 20 different archetypes and showing how individuals in struggle can make peace with that struggle. And making peace with it is paramount to basically having it sort of not influence in their lives.
Yeah.
And they make peace with it in a paradoxical way, not by trying to fix it, but by completely embracing it. So in this case,
Stop there. Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
You're going too in depth now.
Am I?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So that's The Illusion of Money with Peter Koenig. We'll see you then tomorrow.
On a wonderful chaos.
Thank you for being with us. Bye.
Yeah.